Speaking of smart decisions, our guy Mark Ryan from the Fan Upstate does a fantastic job. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. I'll let him plug that. Is joining us today because he had a take that sent the South Carolina friends, and it was just him. All right, there's multiple people. Sent the South Carolina fan base into a frenzy. But first, Mark, thanks so much for joining us, man.
One of my favorite shows. Watch you guys as often as I possibly can. Jake, Blaine, David, what is good? Jake, love having you on our show. Blaine and David, awesome to meet you, man. Awesome to meet you. Let's rock and roll.
Thanks for joining, buddy.
Yeah, definitely, man. Mark, obviously love listening to you guys and what you have going down there. All right, I want to bring up this kind of quandary a little bit, and I want to let you dive into it because if our listeners, you know, again, you read a headline, you hear a headline, sometimes people don't dive into it and really see what's going on. But I want to read this from the Fan Upstate. This is a tweet 3 days ago that kind of sent this firestorm off. It says, Shane Beamer has done a better job than most, creating a positive culture at South Carolina. But in many aspects, he's the equal of Will Muschamp because they have the same amount of wins through 2 years. Will he ultimately end up closer to Muschamp or ascend to the heights of a Spurrier? So that kind of sent some people in a frenzy, all right? And I know that the win totals are equal. And again, if people haven't listened to it, again, there's a lot more that, you know, it's like Will Ferrell said, on the surface it seems calm, but underneath there's a flurry of activity.
Your bag's packed to Milan.
That's exactly right. How quickly can you pack your bags and get to Milan? But, Mark, when you look at it, I believe that Muschamp inherited a better situation than what Beamer did. Not by a million miles, but I think there are degrees to it and there are levels to it. So to me at this point, if their wins are equal and Beamer inherited a tougher situation, don't you think Beamer's done a better job? And trajectory, I think right now, if you're a South Carolina fan, and you know as well as I do, fan is short for fanatical. They loved Will Muschamp when it looked like it was going good. You love Shane Beamer when it looks like it's going good. But it just, the smell off the stew is just a little bit more authentic with Shane Beamer a little bit, don't you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, Jake. You know, in my studies of the coaches that hit in college football, it almost always happens in the modern era in year 3.
Yep.
This is year 3 for Shane Beamer. Now, why is this year so important to him? I think there's a difference, guys, between being on the hot seat and being under pressure. And I think Shane Beamer is under pressure. Why? Because he needs to show that he has actually elevated the bar at South Carolina. Remember, year 2, Will Muschamp had a 9-4 season. That's why he and Beamer have the same record through 2 years. An old football wise man once told me, you are what your record is. So I would say to you, Jake, you know, it's not like Will Muschamp inherited a great situation after Spurrier left mid-season and had stopped recruiting 2 or 3 years prior to when he took over. The cupboard was essentially bare for Will Muschamp. Do I believe that Beamer's doing a better job than Muschamp? I do. The reality is recruiting is not markedly better. And the win-loss total is identical. And gentlemen, if Beamer drops a 7-6 this year, 7-5 in the regular season and a loss to a bowl game, he'll be identical to Coach Boom in year 3. So I ask you guys, when all is said and done, is he going to be closer to Boom or closer to Muschamp? I will answer that closer to Spurrier, but not surpassing Spurrier. And I also think there's a great chance, gentlemen, he makes South Carolina his baby, like his dad did with Virginia Tech, and he could be, if they'll have him, a South Carolina lifer.
Yeah, and look, I don't think some people realize what Spurrier did at South Carolina. I don't know if we're going to see that again. What was it, like 30 games in 3 years, something like that? I don't know if we'll ever see that again at South Carolina. And I know South Carolina fans, I'm not trying to just rip the hope away from you, but I think the perfect situation for South Carolina, because look, at some point, you got to take a step back and kind of realize, you know, it is what it is. Because look at Georgia right now. And I know the SEC is a lot different in this, you know, point in time than it was when Muschamp was there. You know, you look at what Tennessee's doing, becoming a lot more relevant now. Georgia's becoming more dominant, it seems like, every single year. Kentucky seems to be more of a problem than they have been. Florida was really bad when Muschamp was there at South Carolina. Now, we'll see with Billy Napier. I think they need to give him time. But it seems to me that South Carolina can legitimately win or consistently win 8 games, 9 games, and every 3 or 4 years, make a run at the SEC title and play for the SEC championship, which we've seen before. Hell, I watched them do it against Cam Newton in the SEC championship. Now, again, they lost that game badly, but South Carolina is a place that you can win and put yourself in a position to be able to do it. So do I think Shane is going to do what Spurrier did in 3-year spurts? I don't, but I think they could sneak around and win big every, 3, 4 to 5 years, somewhere around there. So that's kind of where I'm at with South Carolina.
Absolutely. I want to know, what's your thoughts? You saw a great Spencer Rattler at the end of the year. All right, you come back. Juice is coming back for them. I think it was huge for both of them to decide to come back. Their defense is mediocre, but do you think Spencer can have a type of year that maybe he can be in contention, maybe a dark horse for the Heisman?
Blaine, it's going to be fascinating because he's been asked to yet again learn another offensive system, right? And we saw how long it took him last year for that finally to click. You'd like to open with some cupcakes, gentlemen. I'll be attending the ACC.
There it is.
And in honor of the All Cupcakes Conference, I have 3 cupcakes for each of you. In honor of that conference, but they would have been much better served opening with a cupcake. They're not getting a cupcake. They're getting North Carolina with the number 1 or number 2 overall pick in the draft. That's not who you want to open up with a brand new offensive coordinator. And again, guys, the running game was abysmal last year. They lose Marshawn Lloyd. Okay, depending on what service you look at, they've either got the 2nd or 3rd worst offensive line in the league. They've got the 2nd or 3rd worst defensive line in the league. Gentlemen, here's a stat for you. They were the only team in college football last year to rank outside of the top 100 in both rush offense and rush defense that had a winning record. And if you're asking Beamer to pull that rabbit out of the hat again, you're asking him to be a magician. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, the reason they were able to do that, and it always comes down to the phase of the game nobody talks about, special teams. But again, you cannot sit there and rely on that and be bad up front and hope special teams is going to save you every year to get to 8-4. But imagine if you're good up front and then you put that special teams with it. That's how you mess around and win 11. That's how you do it. I want to tell you about our friends over at Genucel. It doesn't matter, male, female. It is the best skincare product company around, all right? And they're sold out of their dark spot corrector. Thanks to our listeners here, Booster Club, you guys are the best, and just in time for the summer, it's back in stock, all right? The famous dark spot corrector has not 1, but 3 cutting-edge ingredients and goes to work fast to target sunspots, dark spots, liver spots, any spots. All right, if your dog's got spots, Genucel can fix it. Dalmatians are scared to death. All right, their most popular package includes their summer essentials, like the best-selling Ultra Retinol Moisturizer. Guys, we all use it. David, you've been using it. That's why you got that Krypton skin. That's exactly right.
Morning and night.
Blaine, that's why yours looks good.
So the only reason why it looks good, I'm going to have to use it almost every waking second to keep this up. I'm straight tired face, bags under the eyes.
Tired face?
The whole nine.
I hate tired face and triangle face. That's exactly, this is the worst. So go to Genucel.com/booster. That's GENUCEL.com/booster right now to get your dark spot corrector in Genucel most popular package. That's Genucel.com/booster right now and save over 70%. All right, that is a hell of a deal, okay? And all orders will include a mystery luxury gift while supplies last. That's Genucel.com/booster. Do it now.
Well, Mark, I don't find the question of trajectory that unfair. I mean, Will Muschamp is a great football coach. The problem is he was a better coordinator than a head coach, and we talk about that a lot on our show, is some guys are just better coordinators, and there's no shame in that. I think one of the big differences, though, is what Shane Beamer is doing as a recruiter. It truly is extraordinary, and I'm speaking from personal experience here. The guy recruited me, almost got me to sign with Mississippi State when Sylvester Croom was the head coach, rather than go to Michigan, and you see him be able to bring in guys like Spencer Rattler, even in the transfer portal. My question for you is, when I was growing up, I wasn't thinking of Clemson as any sort of football powerhouse. And what Dabo Swinney has done there has been incredible. And he's proven not only to run an ACC schedule, but then go toe-to-toe with Nick Saban and some of the top coaches when he gets to the college football playoff. Is there some thinking among South Carolina fans that the only reason for that and the only reason Clemson is more of a powerhouse now than South Carolina is because of the ACC schedule, or does South Carolina understand there's other things that they have to fix?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, David, there's a lot of folks over this way that might wonder if South Carolina should have stuck it out in the ACC, considering the easy run that exists in that conference. But to your point, David, Dabo has elevated the bar at Clemson to the point where what he was doing when he started at Clemson would no longer be good enough. And South Carolina is desperately and begging for a coach that can raise the bar similarly for them, right? And so my feeling is Clemson is proof that South Carolina can achieve greatness because Clemson is doing it here. Some of those years where Clemson was at its absolute best, they still would have won the national championship had they played in the SEC, in my opinion. They were at 11-1, 10-2, 12-0 team, no matter what conference they played in. And if it can happen up the road, it can happen at South Carolina. You just need the right guy in charge. Where Beamer is winning recruiting-wise is in the blue chip ratio. You guys know 50% of your players 4 or 5 stars. So he hit that for the first time in South Carolina history last year. Over the last few weeks, though, gentlemen, there's been a lack of 4 stars committing to the Garnet and Black, and there's been some panic setting in that the recruiting classes are now dipping. And when you look at average recruiting ranking, when you look at won-loss record, he's pretty much right where Will Muschamp is. I'd ask you, David, I'm fascinated in this. What about Beamer's recruiting pitch to you made it unique and special from your standpoint?
Well, honestly, one aspect of it was an SEC offer, which was great, first and foremost. But he was just very personal with me and my family and, remembered everyone's names and took, a personal touch. Even when we left, he's calling us and he's texting us, which I know sounds like commonplace. I mean, you guys coached for a long time, but it really is. It means a lot, especially when you're a kid who's trying to get a scholarship and there's other guys in the class like a Tim Tebow or a Matthew Stafford who both came out my year who have 70 offers, and you're trying to figure out where you're shaking out and which schools are actually interested in you and which schools you're just a backup option for. And especially when my high school ran the wishbone and I'm a drop back passer, I'm thinking I've got to get offers. I don't need coaches to just watch my senior year. And, Shane Beamer being able to say, hey, we want you to come here. I can offer you a scholarship right now, and following up with my family, it really meant a lot. So I think he's going to continue to have success recruiting it. And I love to hear you say that about Clemson, because from an outsider's perspective, that's how I feel about it too. And I think South Carolina fans just want to see the same for their program.
Yeah, and Mark, you brought up, the kind of the transition into the program taking the next step. I mean, Dabo Swinney and Clemson is a great example of what happens when you have some patience. Now, this is what I was talking about with Billy Napier in Florida. So remember, he hopped in, went 4-3 as the interim. 2009 went 9-5. Then 2010 went 6-7. Right? Remember, they're getting ready to fire him. Maybe we shouldn't have brought this young guy in to be the head coach. All he does since then is go 10-4, 11-2, 11-2, 10-3, 14-1, 14-1, 12-2, 15-0, 14-1, 10-2, 10-3, and 11-3. So patience, they're not just for doctors. And if you give guys time, it typically takes 3 years to get that cycle, get that culture in there. That's what we were bringing up the other day. Now, is Shane Beamer going to go on this type of run? I think that's unfair, especially in the SEC when you look at what's around you. But, Mark, it's going to be fascinating to see up front. That does scare me. We're going to make our predictions here toward the end of fall camp, and that's one area where I'm looking at, because you lost Nichols. You're starting left tackle in spring, which is devastating. It's like somebody knocking on the door and you open it up and just getting kicked right in the groin. I mean, then they just run away. It's a horrible feeling. But, Mark, it's always a great feeling when you come on, my friend. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media and find the Fan Upstate.
Yes, and I'll tell you what, Jake, North Carolina, Mississippi State, Florida, Missouri, and Kentucky, those 5 swing games, what is the record for those swing games for South Carolina? That's going to determine whether Beamer has elevated the program this year. At Mark Ryan on Air is where you guys can get to me. Would love to have you jump on board. That's at MARC, Ryan on Air. Love you guys. Watch you almost every single day. Thanks so much for having me on. Have the absolute best time at SEC Media Days. It's better than being at the All Cupcakes Conference.
Hey, enjoy those cupcakes. I know Blaine will take a chocolate one, but Mark, really appreciate it, buddy. Look forward to talking to you on the other side.
See you, man.
All right, take care, Jake. Thanks so much for always coming on my show as well, bud. Talk to you soon.
Always a blast, brother. Always a blast. Mark Ryan, man, one of the good ones.
Absolutely.
Does a fantastic job. Hey, YouTube, appreciate you checking us out. Do us a favor. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you like the video if you like it. Best way to keep us growing. We appreciate you.